Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Canada's Prime Minister is a rarity. Like, but then he's not alone. Biden indulges in Gaffes, but that's because of Alzheimer or dementia, the onset of it. And he fumbles, stumbles. But Justin Trudeau, the charismatic, youthful leader, his diplomatic gaffes continue unabated. He goes to India and indirectly favors separatism, directly saying something, but then his whole behavior was garish clothes, very cheap populist style. He goes to England, and the occasion is the demise of Her Majesty the Queen, the head of the state, and he starts singing a rhapsody. He goes to China and reveals a confidential talk of the two heads of the government to the press under the specious, unacceptable plea that Canada is a democracy. If Canada is a democracy, why did he impose emergency act? That was a clear sign of dictatorship. Anyway, President Xi's angry rebuke to Trudeau over leaks to media have further soured Canadian-Chinese relations. And it also raises a very important question. He said that, according to him, China had helped 11 MPs to be elected by giving them funding. The question arises, Canada is a democracy and it's a transparent democracy as stated by the Prime Minister. So why not reveal the names of these 21 people? And then he hums that house but doesn't have a response. As a matter of fact, every time he leaves Canada, sensible Canadians become worried. Worried because he's in the focus of the eye of the diplomats and his forays, unless he is giving money, are viewed with fear, with anger. You remember that episode when he went to Europe for a G7 meeting and started showing his socks. What a childish or rather infantile act. Maybe he thought that showing socks is a sign of diplomacy fineness. As I said earlier, while in London, and it was the mourning for the beloved Queen, and with the aplomb that he is famous for, he managed to create a little lobby bar entertainment with touch of Bohemian Rhapsody. And he got a lot of angry response. He hardly landed in Bali, where according to many press reports, he got a dressing down from the leader of Communist China, and to put a cap on that, managed to have it all, as they say, it was caught on the film. And it was an awkward retreat once the exchange was over, thanks to a nearby door. And then he makes a statement. He has got almost as much press out of that as his triumphal and much brocaded tour of India. In both was the disastrous. And it's good to see the flair for the headlines and the ability to get a starring role in every gathering has not been abandoned by him. He actually is a star material, but star material for which he is now being featured in TV program as drag queen show. Imagine, governing the country is a very serious business. Participation in a drag show shows your mental capability. As a matter of fact, Xi Jinping's angry rebuke to Justin Trudeau after the officials had shared details of the previous meeting highlights the frosty relationship that is going to develop between Canada and China. As a matter of fact, it's already there, but it's going to be further heightened and increased. In the clip recorded by the media pool at the G20 conference, a visible frustrated Xi pulls the Canadian Prime Minister aside and says it's not appropriate for details to leak a private conversation between the two leaders. It should not have been, and normally it's not done. As a matter of fact, I have participated in all my life, at least when I was with the Prime Minister and the President, and we don't say anything. No comments with the reply. And Xi was very clear. He told the translator, Xi, to tell Prime Minister Trudeau that everything we discussed has been leaked to the press and that's not appropriate. And then he goes on further to say, and that's not the way the conversation was conducted. And this was translated into English and then retranslated in the Canadian press. And then the warning. And that's never done. And Xi is, in fact, a very polite person. He kills, but he doesn't warn that he is killing. He warned that the leak would have consequences. And then he said we should have conversation in respectful ways. Otherwise, the results can't be predicted. And then comes the ripsorte from this international dilemma to the domestic scene. In Ottawa, the conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chong told the reporters that Trudeau went to G20 summit unprepared to represent Canada's interests. And that's true. And he forgot Canada's interests and Canadian values. Given that the government Indo-Pacific strategy still has not been released. The strategy is yet to be released, yet to be discussed, yet to be approved. And the Prime Minister goes and indulges in these matters and then starts funding. Chong was very right when he said that Trudeau should release the names of those 11 candidates who received funding from China. Are they members of the House of Commons? Are they the candidates in the next federal election? Canadians do need the answers. And not only Canadians. If you really want to show that what you're saying is true, and you assert, well, Canada is a democracy and we don't hide things from the people, then why not come out with these names? After these 11 people, if they have taken money, are not sincere to Canada. And as a matter of fact, CSIS should ensure that they do not contest the elections. They should not. Trudeau has a moral and ethical responsibility to release these names so that action can be taken, and such interference, if it has taken place, there is no repeat of that. Because this is unacceptable that a foreign country should interfere in our elections. And then, this nasty exchange between the two heads of the state came a day after the government was briefed that during a previous conversation on the margins of the summit, Trudeau had raised serious concern with Xi over China's increasingly aggressive interference activities. Now, why did he fail to tell that the Confucius Institutes would not be welcome? The major issue, why did he fail to tell President Xi that all this policing being done outside China, at least in Canada, would not be acceptable? Now, this testy exchange came a day after the government sources had briefed. And then Trudeau says, in Canada we believe in free and open and frank dialogue And that is what we will continue to have. And he interrupted President Xi's translator again, another unacceptable behavior. He interrupts the translator when he's translating President Xi's message. We'll continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on. Yes, fine. But then at least listen. Good listening is a part of conversation. And then gesturing with his hands, Xi told Trudeau that the two must continue the condition. First, the pair ended the conversation by shaking hands and leaving in opposite direction, with the Canadian Prime Minister looking chastened from the encounter. It was a very uncomfortable exchange. I, as a Canadian, felt humiliated. I'm sure you did as well. Whatever, he is the Prime Minister of our country. And the previous conversation followed repeated warnings from Trudeau and other officials that China had attempted to undermine Canadian democracy. They had interfered in the 2019 federal elections. And pray, what the hell were you doing for 3 years? Elections took place in 2019. Did you take any action in 2020? Any action in 21? Any action now in 22? The year is over ending. Is it a ploy to be exploited as the next year's federal elections? The media reports earlier this month alleged that Beijing had funded a clandestine network of the candidates. And on Monday, the Canadian police charged a researcher at Quebec Power Company with espionage. He was sending trade secrets to China. Fine, that's welcome. Now, Trudeau's team said that he and Xi also discussed Russia's invasion on Ukraine. They also discussed North Korea and the importance of the top COP15 biodiversity conference in December, where China and Canada will co-host nations in an effort to protect nature and fight climate change. But how can you have the same ideas when your views are different? Here you are having carbon tax. In China, they are depending more and more on coal. Where the ends to meet? This is really a case that East is East and the West is West, and never the twain shall meet. What Kipling said is particularly true in the case of China and Canada. The relations between the two countries are very intense, and they are going to be co-hosts. What a comedy. No, it's a burlesque. Trudeau was left out of any formal meeting with Xi. It was a snub. Now imagine he met Joe Biden in a closed-door meeting which lasted 3.5 hours. He also met President Macron and Australian President Anthony Albanese in private meetings. With Trudeau, he had 10 minutes of standing meeting in which more than 3/4 of the time it was a rebuke to the Prime Minister, uncivilized behavior. And Trudeau said that not every conversation with the Chinese leadership was going to be easy, but added that Canada needed to be engaged in constructively and directly with the same time there is challenge to the human rights. You are talking at the cross purposes. The one time you are talking of the security, then you talk of the human rights in China. And then you forget that you are the first world leader to appear in the drag race. The promotional committee says it all. This will go down in the history, said one of the queens. Yes, it will go in the history. It will go down because this is possibly the rarest Prime Minister ever been there. And then she says, I don't mean history, I mean her story. Got it. men dressed up as women, an epic demonstration of Trudeau's male feminist creatures. Combating President Xi, one day, hanging out with dragsters on the Word TV the next day, flying under the famous RuPaul's banner the third day. Is there nothing that the Prime Minister of Canada cannot do? Really, his capacity to perform at different levels is a genius, is versatile. Dressed up in garish costumes in India, singing a rhapsody at the Queen's funeral, showing the socks in Berlin, having been at the receiving end in Bali from China, and then drag queen. I'm thinking that the Kardashians need to bring on the whole family to maintain this kind of celebrity power. Justin Trudeau does it all on his own. He doesn't need help of the family. You simply cannot be busy with that kind of talent. You have got to elect one. And Canadians are very lucky that they elected this sort of talent, which is leading the country and making the world look agape at the capability of the Canadian electorate, who has such a versatile leader. Really, this is something unimaginable and reflects badly on all of us. But then, that's what the way we work. At least let's enjoy that we have an exceptional Prime Minister who excels in all the ways and brings us and keeps us on the word platform, whatever the cause may be. Thank you.